Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio, podcast, and television show. I'm your host, life coach Myrna Young, and I'm very excited to be bringing to you a hurt healing expert today. Her name is Amy Dempster, and we are going to be talking about understanding the healing powers of the earth. And I will tell you, this is an interview that you have to listen to because, I don't know all there is about Mother Earth, but there's healing in the earth. And I myself try to attach to it or communicate with it on a daily basis when I walk in the park. But, I don't know what I'm doing. I just know it's good to be there. So today I'm hoping that Amy can share with me some of the things that would make my walk and my commune with the earth something that I can, be more beneficial to me. So welcome, Amy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited for our chat.
Yes, I'm excited too. All right, so let me give you a little bit more information on Amy. Amy Dempster helps in understanding the healing power of the earth, like I mentioned before. What began as openly sharing her spiritual journey on her popular blog, Following Hawks, has become a resource for others wanting to learn how to communicate with nature and share their own unique healing gifts with the earth. Together with the spirits of the land in the mountains of Northwest Montana, she tends 7 portals on the land where she lives, along with any grid keeping work she has been assigned. She also leads the Earth Tenders Academy, an immersive online journey to help others reestablish their connection with their ancient ancestors, learn to communicate with the seen and unseen forces in their environment, and respectfully offer their healing energy to places in need. Amy is also the host of the podcast, The Earth Keepers. Awesome. Well, hopefully now you're excited about my introduction because yes, we're going to be taking a spin down how we can better communicate with the earth and of course get the healing powers of the earth, which is what we want to do. So Amy, tell us your journey into understanding the healing powers of the earth. Is this a gift that you were born with? Is something that you nurtured? Share your journey.
Yeah, well, it certainly has developed over many years at this point. It wasn't something that I was super aware of as a child. I did grow up on a farm. I spent a lot of time outside. I was with nature all the time, but I don't remember having like really clear communication with nature until really I was an adult and working and really kind of being in a city atmosphere for a long time and a lot of days and a lot of years. And back in 2008, I started having these really kind of unusual experiences with hawks, the birds, and it wasn't like they weren't in my environment or hadn't seen them before that, but they started coming really close to me and repeatedly over and over. It happens once and you go, wow, that was kind of cool. But when it happens 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 times, you start saying, okay, there's something going on here. Is someone trying to send me a message? Like, what's going on? And really, just led me to start asking more questions. And it's hard to remember now. The 2008 doesn't seem like that long ago to me anyway. But it feels like at that time, there just wasn't as much information. There weren't as many resources that there are now. And so I could find little bits and pieces about kind of animal communication or that type of thing, but nothing quite seemed right. And so I really just kind of, continued along, asked more questions. I was meditating on a somewhat regular basis. And after a number of years, I received a pretty strong message that it was time to move where there were pine trees and water. And so it surprisingly happened fairly quickly over a period of just a few months before my husband and I moved to Montana. And it was really in that journey. And then after really moving and getting settled in, I would go out for walks on a daily basis. My neighborhood had these tall, towering pine trees. And I started realizing that they were sending me messages and that I,
Wow.
was receiving this communication, which
Wow,
again
wow,
seemed
wow.
really kind of strange to me. I didn't want to tell anybody. I didn't want anyone to know I was talking to the trees. It was
Oh, wow.
a little bit weird for me at first, but it really sparked my kind of interest and imagination. And I started asking a lot more questions like, okay, well, if I can receive these messages from trees, then it seems like I could probably talk to them too, right? Like they should be able to understand me. And so that was really when I started diving in a lot deeper into just kind of learning how this all works, learning how to communicate with nature, and really the wisdom that's all around us all the time that we can tap into if we'd like.
Well, that's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. A couple of things I want to circle back to. So the hawk started coming to you. You didn't say why that was. Is that because, yeah, why was that? Why was the hawks drawn to you, first of all?
I mean, also, I don't know if I ever got a complete clear answer, even all these years later. I think,
Right.
I,
What's your wildest guess, obviously?
yeah, I mean, my sense is that they were really, number one, kind of just the spark that I needed to lead me on this spiritual journey. Like, I think they were, helping with the awakening process, which I think hawks are, participating in humanity's awakening, because obviously, when you call your business Following Hawks, I get lots of messages and I hear lots of stories from people. And so many people are kind of sparked onto this path by birds in particular, but hawks in a lot of cases. And so I
So
think some of it was just to lead me.
How does the bird hawk fit in it to, what's so special about hawks? I mean, I'm coming here from totally green.
Yeah.
How does, I've heard about eagles, and I've studied eagles. How does hawk and hawk and the human beings, is there a connection at all?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, especially with kind of intuitive messages or messengers in this, it's always unique for each person individually, but there are some kind of general statements for, different animals or different birds. And obviously,
Okay.
whenever you have an animal coming to you or, a dream or something, you could look it up and find out what the kind of main messages are. And oftentimes with hawks, the messages is really, they have that higher vantage point view. They can see the big picture. They can, see over a larger area. And so a lot of times that's the message kind of connected with hawk is really connecting and really kind of being in this in between of the spirit realm and the earth realm, right? They're like floating above us and seeing that big picture. So sometimes that's kind of what the message is. And I have taken, as the years go by, now when I see hawks, it really feels to me like the message is you're on the right path, you're on the right track, keep going, keep going in this direction. And so
see the big
that's
picture,
really what I've come
right?
to.
And not just right in front of you. All right, so that was the first circle back. The second circle back was amazing because I've heard this so many, I've never heard the hawk thing. I'm green up with the hawks, but I know about communicating with nature. In fact, I had this lady on my show, and she invited me back on her show. So we did a dual thing. And when I was on her show, she said something, but I wasn't the interviewer. She was asking me questions, so I circle back to it. But one of the things she said is that they were climbing a mountain, and the mountain was speaking to her.
Yes.
and that has stayed with me for so long, about that you can hear from the mountain. She could hear from the mountain, and the mountain was speaking to her. So when you talked about just now, the trees were speaking to you. Let's expand on that, please, because I'm very curious about that. So you're walking in nature, and the trees were speaking to you. What were they saying? I mean, expand on that, please. I don't want to ask stupid questions. Just tell me what I need to know so I won't have to ask the question.
Yes. So it's interesting because, we have, as humans, we've kind of created language that we, believe to be the one way to communicate, right? And And the reality is within, the earth realms, everything else is still communicating, but it's communicating, intuitively or telepathically. And so as humans, that's just not a skill that's cultivated in it, most of us, from childhood to learn how to receive those kinds of messages or information. And so everybody receives them differently. And it's really easy for a lot of us to dismiss, especially when it's something like a feeling or a sense, right? Where you can just, say, well, that's just weird that my stomach started hurting when I went into that house, when really like that's telepathic communication, sending you a message. And so what often happens for me anyway, but I find for a lot of people, when messages come in, what you would consider clairaudiently, like actual words or messages come in that way, it sounds like you're talking to yourself in your head, right? It just sounds like a stream of consciousness in your head. And so a lot of us just think, I just made that up. I just imagined that. But what it kind of felt like for me with the trees is almost like, thoughts in my head, but that I didn't put there. And so that's what really kind of initially made me start questioning it, was like, yeah, where did this come from? This just like fell into my into my brain out of nowhere.
Give me an example. You're walking and you hear a message or a thought that's in your head. I'm trying to get some context here.
Yeah.
What does it say?
Yeah. So initially, the trees were actually asking me to pick up trash and garbage on my walks. So while I was out walking, I was getting kind of pointed at like, hey, do you see that bottle down there in the ditch? Can you go get it? And so that's like something where, sure, I could have, thought to myself, there's a bottle in the ditch, I should go get it. But it was enough, abstract or, like I wasn't looking, they would point me in a certain direction I wasn't looking, or that type of thing. And so, so I started picking up trash, and I found that this is a really common thing. It's almost like, in some ways, I think it's establishing trust, right? Because a lot of these energies are not accustomed to talking to humans and not accustomed to humans listening to them. And so they're kind of just, testing to see if you can hear them and if you can receive the message. And so trash is kind of a common thing with the trees to ask people to do. They've got to look at it all day, but they don't have the arms and legs to pick it up and throw it away. So they're asking us because we can do it. So so sometimes it's very
and then what did it progress to after trust was built? Was it something else? Okay.
Yeah, well, it really became kind of multi-layered initially, and some of that trust really was on my end as well. If I would go out for a walk and forget to bring a bag, I would say in my head like, oh, I totally forgot to bring a trash bag today. Sorry about that. I'll do it tomorrow. And then there would be a trash bag like right on my path. And so I would, okay, I'll pick up the bag and then pick up trash, or if there was something that was particularly difficult for, I think, oh, I don't want to scramble all the way down that hill for that, piece of trash. And I would feel really urged to do it. And so I'd, scramble down the hill and I'd pick up the trash and I'd turn around and there would be something like a big feather right behind me, where I would think, I just walked down there. That feather was not there.
That feather was not there. Yeah.
10 seconds ago.
I heard that feather is a sign, right?
Yeah. Okay. So those types of things, I think, also helped me to really trust and believe like, okay, this is really happening. I'm really like, this conversation is going both ways. And after that, it really, it became a practice, of seeing if I could kind of receive the messages or seeing if they could go deeper, or kind of figuring out like, how do I know which energies want to communicate with me? Can I talk to a rock? Can I talk to a mountain? How do these messages come in? Absolutely. Everything in our environment is animate and, it's energy just like we are. And so it can, some are more willing and eager to talk to humans than others. And I always suggest people start with like plants, especially. I think it's really common, right? We feel comfortable talking to our house plants or like the plants in front of our house, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the same thing, just like you would look at a plant in your house and think, oh, you need some water, or you look a little sad today, a little
I know,
droopy.
and I know a lot of people talk to their plants and they say that it makes them grow and stuff. You're right.
Yeah,
People that have
absolutely.
gardens do talk to their plants. That's
Yeah,
true,
yeah.
right?
So it's just
Why
kind of the
not the
same
trees?
thing, or your
Right,
animals, right? You talk to your
right,
pets and you make up whole, voices for them. And
right,
they're
right,
usually
right.
accurate, right? You're actually picking up on the energy of their vibration, and what their personality is. And so it really does
Right.
extend. And so it's easier to start with things like plants, around your house that you might already have a relationship with. And I always say, the bigger and older it is, the slower and quieter the communication is. So a mountain, for instance, might take some more time to really tune into. So if you're just starting to practice and you're, just starting out, you might not want to start with a mountain because you might feel like nothing's happening, I'm not getting anything. But
Mhm.
it takes usually a lot more kind of quiet slowing down. It might only come in, one word or one feeling, instead of a real exuberant energy or conversation with, a plant in your front yard.
Something is on my mind, and it might skew the conversation a different way, but I have to ask it.
Sure.
So I know that we are physical beings and we are spiritual beings, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of spiritual things we can't see.
Mhm.
So when we're communing with nature, trees, rocks, mountains, is it actually the non-physical world that we're communicating to, like spirits, or is actually the rock?
It's a little bit of both.
Okay, all
Just
right.
like us. I mean, really, they're just like us in the sense that we actually have multiple bodies, right? So we have our physical body that we tend to think of as the entirety of ourselves. But
Right, right.
really, we have our spiritual body, which you might call your soul,
Mhm.
that also can communicate and it is a part of your physical makeup. And we also have our energy body, which is, it's just outside of our physical body. This, some people call it an aura, right? You have that
Or right, right. I
kind
was
of
just gonna say that, right.
energy, yeah, that's vibrating outside of your body. And
Mhm.
so, a tree would be the same way. And so you can, communicate, you can feel the energy of that tree you don't even have to put your hand all the way up to it, right? You can
Mhm.
feel its energy
I'm getting
body.
it.
And
Right.
then same thing, it has a soul, a spirit, that you
Okay.
can actually communicate with as well. And so
Okay.
when you kind of take that, that's why, plants and
Okay.
trees are easier initially to kind of make those connections with, because we can physically see them in our environment and feel like, okay, that's a tree, I can see it.
Okay.
As opposed to, there are many energies, that are present that I call the spirits of the land that,
Right.
you may not see at all. They are only an energy body. And so that's another layer of communication. But the trees and plants and mountains and crystals and those things are easier because we can, they're tangible to us.
Ah, I'm getting it. I'm getting it. So I'm glad I asked the question, which
Yeah.
leads us in to one of the questions that I had here. You said you learned to speak with the spirits of the land. So not only can you commune with the trees, the physical people, or the
Mhm.
rocks and things like that, but then the same thing that I was talking about, the spirits of the land that we can't see, but we know that they're there, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you've learned, and which is where a lot of people are empaths, and you mentioned, clairvoyance and all the other voyance or whatever. I think there's three,
Yeah.
right?
The clairs. Yeah.
Right, right, right. So yeah, how can we learn to a novice like myself, right?
Mhm.
Or someone that's listening,
Yeah.
how can we learn to communicate with the spirits of the land and the trees and the rocks and that? I mean,
Yeah.
I think you mentioned that first we need to start with our house plants and then move
Yeah.
up,
That's a
graduate.
good place to start. Yeah, yeah. And so many people have houseplants and feel an
Right, right,
affinity
right.
to them already and feel like they
Hmm.
love them and are connecting with them
Okay.
on that level. But yeah, absolutely. The first things I always recommend to people in this kind of communication is we have to learn to slow down because we're just really accustomed to walking through the world at a certain pace and a certain noise level, and oftentimes just always being in conversation or having headphones on, or whatever. And so the very first thing I would say, if you're going to just go on a walk around your block or the walk in your park, is to go by yourself, leave your phone behind, and be quiet and walk slowly. So whatever pace you would normally walk at, cut it in half, which still won't be slow enough. It will be to get started. But, that's the message I repeatedly got when I first started, was just, nope, go slower. Nope, go even slower. No, even slower than that. But the point is really to start noticing these things in your environment. And when we're moving really fast, it's hard to notice that there's, say, a plant that's really vibrant and beautiful and has this, special flowers right now. And it's those are communications with us. Those are ways that the energies are saying, hey, look at me over here, like, come over and talk to me. But if you're walking too fast and you're moving too fast and kind of skipping over or thinking, all the trees look the same, they don't look the same. They're very different. And so you want to initially just start noticing what you notice, like what do you see, what catches your attention, what tree is a different color green than all the other trees. And when you see something like that, then you can approach that tree or that plant or that rock or whatever and just kind of say, hey, I would like to connect with you. And you can say it in your head if you are worried about looking like the weird lady talking to trees in the park. And you can just kind of initially start that conversation and just say, is there anything you'd like to share with me? Is there, oh gosh, your flowers are especially beautiful, I love that color of purple, those types of things. And it's really, it would just be like meeting a new friend, right? Like you might compliment them and you might, just start to get to know them. And maybe you want to touch them, maybe they want to be touched, maybe they don't. And so I had somebody tell me the other day that she was walking through a park and there was a tree that's right in the middle of a busy trail, and she went to put her hand on it as she walked by and felt really strongly the tree say, please don't do that, everybody touches me all day long, right? Like, and they don't ask. And so sometimes it is just a matter of respecting that boundary of, would you just walk up and touch somebody that you just met? Probably not. You might want to get to know them before you give them a hug. And so really just kind of establishing those boundaries, letting them know that you'd like to communicate. And, you may or may not receive any immediate messages, but again, we have to start getting used to using our whole body and using our whole energy body for that communication. So the communication might be, a warm feeling in your heart, or a flutter in your stomach, or a breeze that kicks up right after you ask if you can hug the tree, those types of things. And so that's why we have to move so much slower and kind of be quiet, is to allow this information to flow in and to start getting accustomed to how we receive information.
Yes. Well, I know that I was going to learn something from you today. And I'm like listening so intently here, because one of the things that I do every day is I walk in a park, and I love it more than anything else in the whole world. I mean, I've been doing it now for about 5 years, because I've been self-employed for 5 years. So I've been able to do that. And it's a 5K park. So it's got the trails where there's all the waters and lake, because it's called Lakes Park.
Okay.
And then it goes into a sanctuary where it is all trees, and it's beautiful, and you feel God there or whatever. But what do?
Yeah.
I walk through with my headset and I'm listening to podcasts or I'm listening to a book.
Yeah.
And that is part of my joy, because when I'm walking through there, I'm actually learning, and there's one time my headset was broken, and I recognized that the joy that I have from just listening to stuff while I'm walking is like a level 10.
Yeah.
But what you've just told me, and I'm going to practice, is when I get into the part where there's all trees, it's like think of the Amazon forest that they just put a path through. It's like
Yeah,
all
sounds
trees,
beautiful.
right?
Yeah.
And it's a godly place. Like when I go in there, I'm thinking of the Garden of Eden. I'm thinking like God is walking with me. And I actually do talk to the trees, but not
Yeah.
the way that you just told me to do it. Um, so what I'm going to do now, moving forward, is when I'm in there, I'm going to take off my headset,
Yeah.
walk slower.
Yes. Yes.
But there's also one thing I also want to tell you. After walking through this particular thing 6 days a week for about 5 years, recently, maybe 2-3 months ago, I noticed the most beautiful tree. And every day now I stop and reverence that tree
I'm
because
sure
I'm
it loves it.
saying that if I can be, it is the most gorgeous. It's like 3 trees all in one, and it's big and beautiful. And I stop there and I'm setting intentions like, oh, I wish I could touch as many people in the world as your leaves and things like that. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Sometimes I talk to Mother Earth that actually produces such a beautiful tree. And a couple of times I've gone by and I've touched it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I also remember, because I speak to a lot of people on the podcast, or I may have heard it from another podcast, but someone said that, yeah, you ask permission for before you touch the tree. And right, Sadhguru, actually his book Internal Engineering talks a lot. That's probably where I got it from. Talks a
Okay.
lot about communicating with trees and communicating with nature. So this is something that I've been thinking of for a while. And then one more, I was listening to a sermon the other day, and this guy was talking. He was a pastor that says he doesn't walk himself, and every day when he walks, there's a rock that he passes. And I think the Bible says that if you don't praise God, the rock is going to praise God. So whenever he passes by this rock, he praises God. And I do the same thing
I
every
love
morning.
it.
There's this huge rock.
I love
So
it.
whenever I'm coming by the rock, I started praising God. And now I've started to sit on the rock. Right. So now I'm going to start talking to that rock.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You see, I'm already in the vibe space.
You're doing
Not as good as you, but I'm like a baby.
Yeah. Well, and it's really interesting too, because, the reality is, if you think about the lifetime of that tree that's been there, or the rock,
Yes.
or, whatever, because I think a lot of us think like, well, I don't have time for this, or I don't, I can't add this to all of the other things. And the reality is like, yeah, if you just take 5 minutes to take your headphones off and make that connection, that's more than most of those energies and those beings are interacting with any human, that anybody that's noticing them. So just taking a few minutes, even once a week, but especially every day, if that's your normal path, is going to make a huge difference. And you'll start noticing, I mean, even the fact that you'd walk there for a while before you notice that tree, the more you're interacting, the more that kind of two-way conversation is happening, the more will be revealed to you, right? Like the more you'll see, and you'll think, that wasn't there, right? I swear that wasn't there before. And then it's, you're at the vibration, you're at the right frequency to be tuned in and dialed into it, and see a lot more than just what's visible to your eyes.
Yes, I love it. I can't wait for that tree to start talking to me.
Yeah.
Because I stand there every day, and I learned somewhere, I don't remember where, because I pick up these little pieces everywhere about reverence. So that's basically what I do. I stand there, I do take off my headset, and I reverence it. And, I stand there and I look at it, and I'm trying to communicate, but never did I think it was going to communicate back. I'm just like setting the intention and just enjoying it. And then I actually sit in a rock, and I do a meditation where I'm thinking that I'm like a rock. And like, I imagine that rock that's sitting in the park there, and everybody is walking by. So I'm like, I'm like starting. So that is beautiful. So the people that are listening, yes. I'm going to say one other thing. I was listening to a podcast this morning, and the doctor was talking about COVID and some of the things that you can do to prevent your body, or to help with your immune system, and to prevent your body from, being seriously compromised with COVID. And definitely one of the things he talked about is walking in a park and just seeing the green. He's saying the green does something to your immune system. So yes,
it's really, really amazing. And it's
yes.
of course, blows my mind that we haven't been talking about this for a year and a half, and the importance of this, or really explaining to people like why it works, because it seems so weird, right? That like, what does going on I mean, sure, exercise is good for me, but why, what does it matter? And, there are tons and tons and tons of studies. It's, scientifically proven kind of how our bodies interact with nature and how we're meant to interact with nature, because the reality is we have kind of created these bubbles that we live in now, right? So even when we are outside, we've got, rubber soles on our shoes, and, we never sleep on the ground like, ancient ancestors would have done. We aren't in easy communication with nature like we used to be. And the reality is, our vibration is, our healthy and healed vibration is the same as the earth's vibration, in the sense that if you go outside and you touch a tree, it's why it feels so good, right? To be out in nature is because it's healing to us. And so put your hands on a tree, sit down on our park bench, take your shoes and socks off, let your feet be on the earth. It doesn't even take any time. It's literally seconds that your body drops into that healing frequency and starts shifting to a different vibration and matching, it's called resonance, right? Your body finds resonance with the other vibrations that you're in vicinity of. And so if you're in vicinity of your laptop and your phone 24/7, that's what you're vibrating with.
Yeah.
And so
the 5G, the 5G radiation.
Never mind all of that. So
Right.
yeah. So just, it is so, so important. And it really does boost our immune system. And even just looking at nature has been proven to, lower our blood pressure and relax us and boost our immune system and all of these things. And so
yeah,
it
that's
really,
exactly
really
what the doctor
is
said. He says
more important than we think.
Seeing the green does it for you.
Yeah. There's a great book that now I'm going to forget the title of, but it talks a lot about the different, darn, it's not coming to me, the different studies, medical studies and whatnot that have been done. But one of them was specifically, they were testing different hospitals, hospitals where you had patients that had a view of nature while they were recovering in the hospital versus those that didn't. And it was remarkable, the differences between just being able to see nature. And then obviously even better if you can go get your body in contact with it.
Right. And community. So I should be way above, because I've been doing it for an hour every day for 5 years.
Sitting on that rock does more good than you think.
So obviously,
go
this
out and sit on a rock. It really does heal you.
I mean, I was proud of myself. I said, well, listen, I'm like up there.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Plus, I live in Florida, so in attention to all that, I get the sunshine.
Yes, which is also incredibly healing and healthy.
Right, incredible healing powers. All right, this is an awesome conversation. So quickly, let's talk about the 7 portals of the land, because you mentioned that you something that you know how to open the 7 portals. Do you want to talk about that? What are these 7 portals, and how do you open them?
This is where we have to get more flexible with our brains and our thinking and our multi-dimensional nature here on the earth. But a lot of people are familiar with what's called ley lines or energy lines, grid lines in the earth, but the earth has an electromagnetic frequency, and it is concentrated in certain areas and lines. It's what, say in Australia, the Aboriginal people, follow the song lines, right? They're just, you're picking up the energy that's in the earth. And so the places that those lines cross are heightened energy. And so oftentimes
I've actually heard about that. I heard about in India, there's some kind of line where there's some monasteries. I've heard about that. And I was also born near the equator. Is that one of the lines?
Well, yeah, I mean, the equator would be, a big portion of the earth. And this is kind of how it is. Like they're all over the earth. It's crisscrossed there. If you see a map of it, I mean, it's like they're, crazy. So there's some that are, that are more active than others or have more energy in them. But you're right. A lot of them, and many people are familiar with this as being in Europe, that all of these kind of ancient churches were along these lines, and then Stonehenge and those types of things. And they oftentimes that's where you'll find real big religious temples, right? Because people knew, they were very familiar with this type of thing. And so, and the reason they were built there is that the belief was really that it was easier to commune with the divine in these locations, right? The energy is heightened. It's easier to do this. Now, as human beings, we have changed a lot from thousands of years ago. We're not as dense. The earth's energy isn't as dense as it was. And so we're able to do a lot of this communication that our ancient ancestors couldn't do as easily, right? They had to go to these locations and these ceremonial places where the energy was heightened and cultivated and whatnot. And so that's why churches were often built, churches and temples in these locations. But there are places all over the world where, kind of this energy is heightened. And what gets created there really is a portal or a vortex. Is just, a swirling bowl of energy. And what you have in that is the ability for energies to move through and using their consciousness, right? We oftentimes think about time travel as like, you step in a box and you push a button and you go somewhere else. But it's really, we're just using our consciousness to shift into other dimensions. And so that's really what's happening in portals. And you can think of it as being even in these places where, of great religious importance, right? Is that people were using their consciousness through prayer and, reverence, all of these different things to be able to commune with the other side, the higher realms, that type of thing. And so and so that's what happens in portals, is that energies are able to come in, whether those are angels or ascended masters or star beings or wherever else in the multiverse there are energies they can move through. And we can also use our consciousness to move through them and go into other realms. And so there are 7 portals on the property where I live. It took a couple of years before I was told that they were there. And some of that has to do. But
you were also sent there, right? You're saying that you were in the city and someone sent you by the pine trees.
Yes. Correct. So you were sent there. Okay. It was all divinely guided. I am certain. Right. And it was, the energy that I cultivated over doing the work that I do over a number of years in that place also made it kind of a safe, energetic spot for these portals to be. And so really it was, my guides, which I have come to learn over time is really, other fragments of my soul, right? There are other kind of versions of me than other realms that are coming in and telling this version of me, hey, you already know how to do this, so help us out here
that is so beautiful.
Yeah. And so, so they showed me how to open. What's that?
I said, I want to be you.
Yeah. Well, we all have this going on. It just takes a little, you have to start kind of loosening up your thinking. It's been a process for me too, to go, oh my gosh, is this really happening? This is me over in this other dimension doing
I do a meditation right now, and I don't do it very well because I really can't do it properly. But the guy talks about creating an energy portal in front of you and stepping into that energy portal. You know what I mean? So now I know what he's talking about.
Yeah. You're really just kind of shifting your consciousness into an energy vortex that can carry you to another place. And that's what's happening.
Great. That's amazing. Wow. What a beautiful, interesting conversation. So, all right, we're coming to the end of it. So obviously, anybody that's listening that want to hear more of this can connect with Amy on our podcast called The Earth Keepers. So tell us about that podcast. It's probably kind of the same here. Do you invite other Earth Keepers guests, or or it's just you on the podcast?
It's just me. Yeah.
Okay.
It is just me kind of riffing on all of these different topics, kind of depending on what's coming through for me. I share a lot of my personal stories and kind of how I figure some of these things out, or the interactions that I have with other energies and with the earth.
Beautiful.
And yeah, I talk about all of these kind of multidimensional topics.
So can you communicate with the mountains?
Absolutely, yes. Yes, I think I might even have one podcast that's just about communicating with mountains.
Just communicating with the mountains. Okay.
Yes,
That's
yes.
all right. That's awesome. All right. So how can our listeners connect with you? I mean, I'm sure your podcast is in all the podcast players, but
It is.
tell us your website, how they can connect with you. What are your handles on social media and things like that?
Yeah, so my website is followinghawks.com, just like the bird, and you can find the podcast there. You can find all of everything that I do lives there. My Instagram handle is at Following Hawks, and I have a free Facebook group called the Following Hawks Earth Keepers Community. And yeah, there's a spot on my homepage where you can sign up for a free training with me, where I talk all about how to communicate with the spirits of the land.
Oh, beautiful. So you have a training class. That's
Yes.
beautiful.
Yes.
All right. Yes. Wow. So people that want to expand their knowledge on this is actually beautiful. Yes, I love that. All right. I will also connect you to that podcast I was on. I don't remember what it's called now, but yeah, you guys are spiritual beings in the same place. So I'll introduce you to her, and you can go on her podcast and talk about it.
That'd be awesome. Thank you. It sounds like we're on the same wavelength.
That's right. It's yes. Her podcast was something about soul. I don't exactly remember what it was now, but that is awesome. Like, listen, I was looking forward to our conversation, and you did not disappoint. I've come. Well,
thank you for having me.
I've come away. Yes, I've come away with a way for me to deepen my connection to to nature. I've already walking in it, and I'm already communicating with it. But now I'm gonna look for the communication back from it.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes, you'll have to let me know how it goes for you.
Slow down, unplug, and listen. And I bet you any money I will hear too. So
I think you will. I think it's already you're doing 90% of it. It's the last 10% is going to be easy.
Yeah, the last 10% is going to be easy. So that is amazing. Well, listen, this was totally enjoyable. Absolutely fantastic. So I appreciate you, Amy, for coming on the show and opening our minds, expanding our minds. Like, I call the show Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life. So today we transformed our minds, the fact that we all know that we have, a physical body, we have an energy body, and we have a soul or a spirit body. But knowing things and walking into knowledge is two different things. You know what I mean?
Very true.
So, and your explanation of how we can communicate with trees, because the trees are just like us, like, as Oprah would call it, that was my aha moment. As soon as you said that, my mind opened up. And I now said, okay, you know what? I can understand. You know what I mean? And once you understand, now I know when I'm standing in front of that tree that I do every day and I reverence it, now I'm actually going to be looking for its energy. You know what I mean? And trying to communicate with an energy instead of looking at the leaves, because that's what I was doing.
Yes, well, that's great too.
I was looking at the leaves and the branches, which is still in the physical realm. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's perfect too. Just the noticing is a big part of the communication, and
okay.
Just like you would enjoy being noticed by somebody else, they enjoy you noticing them.
Yeah. And I heard from Sadhguru that when you see a flower, that's exactly what he was saying, actually. But again, you get a little piece of the information, and it's like a jigsaw puzzle, and then you get the big piece. So today you actually allowed me to get the big piece. But Sadhguru talked about when you see a flower to stop and admire the beauty, because that's what it's there for. for you to
Yes.
admire the beauty. And
Yes.
I, when I see a flower, I stop and do that, right? So
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. I
admire the
think so
beauty of the
many of us
flowers.
do.
So
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Well, listen, thank you guys for tuning in to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio, podcast, and television show. I was so excited about our conversation today because, yes, you see how I'm energized by just talking about nature. You will be energized by just being in it and touching it and communicating with it. It raises your energy level like sky high. So, Amy, thank you for the energy that you sent me. Thank you for the healing energy that you sent over here. I can feel it. So it's beautiful. So, wishing you well on your podcast, the Earth Keepers. Yeah, so once again, thank you guys for tuning in. Amy, any last words before we wrap up?
I don't think so. Thank you so much for having me. This has been a great conversation. I've loved it.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you guys. So if you're listening to this on iTunes, remember to rate and review because this is good stuff. All right. So until next time, blessings.